Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome back to another video. This video was not at all what I was planning on recording for today. But God said, this is what you're gonna do. So here we are. This was a very tough video to record, especially because I also recorded it in Spanish. So it was basically like I was going through it twice. But I thought it was very important for people to kind of know the backstory as to why Islam. If you haven't seen my convert story, make sure to check that out because some of the topics that we'll be talking about here, I also mentioned there. So let's get started. So why I chose Islam? It's very simple. I didn't. But in order for me to get to that, I think we need to go back. And I am going to take you back to the day that my son passed, July 1st, 2019. So I remember this day as if it was yesterday. And I am going to take you back to some specific points in that day, or parts in that day that really set like the path, I guess, for where I am today. So I remember I was in the ambulance, and till this day I still get like triggered when I hear an ambulance. But I remember I was in the ambulance and I was like, this ambulance is going so slow. It felt like the ride took forever. And I remember in my head, that was the moment when I said, like, my son is gone. I kept telling myself, like, they're not going fast enough, which means he's gone, you know? If not, they would be trying to get there faster. But we get to the hospital and my dad is waiting for me there. They take my son in, my dad comes looking for me. Then the doctors come looking for me and they ask me, okay, like to take me to where they're taking care of him, basically, where they're trying to resuscitate him. And they asked me if I want my dad to come in. And at first I told them no, because I was like, what if my dad gets a heart attack? Like, my dad is in the older side. And I was like, I can't, I can't make him go through that. But then something inside me was like, you also can't take that away. You can't keep him out. So I was like, you know what? It's fine. You can bring him in. And I remember the doctors there were so many doctors working on my son. And I remember I just kept praying and praying and praying. And then the doctors came over and I heard those words, like, we did everything we could. And I saw that they did everything that they could. So they took my son back to kind of prep him so that we can hold him and do all of that. And I remember my mom was coming behind the ambulance, but she was a little back. So all of this happened before my mom even got there. And while they were prepping my son, my mom arrived. And I'm not sure who it was that told her. I was already in the room, but I can still hear when my mom screamed. It was just so, it was very painful. Just the sound of her scream was very, very painful, aside from everything that was going on. But I remember my dad kept telling my mom, you have to stay strong for Rosie. You have to stay strong for Rosie. And even though my dad was telling my mom that, in my head, I'm like, I gotta stay strong for them. Because what if something happens to them? What if my dad gets a heart attack? What if my mom, the way that my mom was screaming, you would think that my mom was dying right there. So I'm like, I can't let something happen to them. So I kind of, and I'm not saying in any way that it was their fault that this happened, but I kind of suppressed my feelings so that I could attend to them. And because of this, I just became numb. I was so numb. And you know, human beings, when they're numb, they turn to alcohol and other worldly things. And that's exactly what I did. I was in a very, very dark place. So for the past 4 years, I was in a very dark place, and I used to say that I had secondhand suicide. I don't know if you guys had heard of the term secondhand smoke, which is when somebody is smoking and the smoke hits you and then you get like secondhand smoke. That's kind of like what I had, but with suicide. So I was suicidal, but I wouldn't act upon it. And the reason why I wouldn't act upon it is because I kept telling myself, I know the pain of losing a child, and I would never want my parents to experience the pain that I have to experience every single day. But in those 4 years, I came close to death like 15 times. I wouldn't do anything, but I would put myself in very dangerous situations. At one point, I got so depressed that I felt like giving up. When I woke up in the morning, I felt like I had no purpose, no drive. It's like everything in me was just shut off. And for a long time, I was plainly on survival mode, where I would get up to go to work because I had to get money to pay for where I was living. I wasn't even eating at the time. I wouldn't even get hungry. I would go days without eating. I would go 5 days without eating. It was the longest that I had gone without eating, 5 days. I was just on survival mode. Everything I do was because I needed to do it in order to survive. But inside, I didn't want to survive. I didn't want to be here. I felt this void. I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. My life felt so heavy. And I remember one day, I was just so done. I didn't even care about going to heaven. All my life, you know, that was what my parents taught me, you know, that's the goal, to get to heaven. And I remember I told my mom, I told her, it's okay. God can hand you my son. We both started crying, and my mom kept telling me, like, no, he needs to go to you. But I was just so done with the pain and the suffering and the depressed state. I was tired. I was exhausted. And when I tell you that I was not looking for God, I was not looking for God. Heck, I was definitely not looking for Islam. I didn't even know about Islam. And then my friend, he told me about Ramadan, and I looked it up, and there was something that I read that was the thing that was like, this is it. This is how you're gonna get to heaven, and you're gonna hold your son again. You guys can pause. I'm gonna put it on the screen so you guys can also read it. But that was what I read. that I felt like it was God telling me, you're gonna get to see him again. And I didn't know this when I told my mom. I didn't know this. She actually told me about a week ago. But the day that I told my mom, I remember I woke up and I texted my therapist. And I was like, I need to tell my parents. I gotta figure out how to tell them. And my therapist was like, you know what? Like, wait it out. Wait it out. See if this is really what you want, you know? Take some time. And something inside me was just like, no, you have to tell them. In my head, I was like, if I don't tell them, I won't be able to practice Islam the way that I want to practice it. The real way to practice it, you know? And I remember I went to my mom and I told her, and my mom was like, that's all right, you know? It's fine. And a week later, or a week ago, I mean, my mom tells me, that day when you told me you were converting or reverting to Islam, that morning, your father and I had started fasting and praying for you, only for you. So when I actually told my mom this, she was like, it has to be God, because I was not looking for God. I was not looking for a religion. I was not looking for any of that. Yet somehow, God found me. Somehow, Islam found me. And when I took my Shahada, I felt that weight lifted off my shoulders. I remember I came home after, when I went and took my Shahada, my imam and his wife, they actually took me to lunch and all this stuff. When I got back home, I remember I fell down to my knees and I just cried. I cried so much because I finally felt that God was truly with me. I finally felt all that depression, all that suffering. It was like as if it was ripped out of me. And my life has been so wonderful ever since. Ever since that day that I decided to convert or revert, my life has just been full of happiness. No matter what comes my way, all the hates, all the negativity, all the stuff that I've experienced doesn't even bother me. And it's like I truly feel at peace. I truly feel God in my life. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful to God, because even though I pushed him away so many times, he was still waiting for me. He was still waiting for me with open arms. And what's funny is I wasn't planning to start this YouTube. That was nowhere near my mind. The way that this whole thing kind of started was I posted a picture on Facebook where I had a hijab on, and I posted, I was like, okay, y'all, don't freak out. And then I kind of told them, like, that I had converted and everything, and everybody just went crazy. People started calling my parents, people started messaging my sister. Everybody was just like, what's wrong with her? What's going on? Is she okay? And my parents were just like, what's happened? Like, yeah, she's fine. Like, what's going on? And my dad tells me, I think he thinks that YouTube is smaller than Facebook. But my dad told me, he was like, maybe you shouldn't post on Facebook. And if you want to post something, just post it on YouTube. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, it's not like anybody's going to see it. Boy, was I wrong. And I remember before I recorded my first video, I prayed and I told God, if if it reaches just one person, I will glorify you anyway. Even if it's just one person. And that video has just blown up, and I don't even know how. I was in no way promoting the video or anything like that. It was just it was all that was just all God. And although this was a very tough video to record, I really hope that it inspires people not to look for a religion, but to look for God, to truly look for God. Because no matter what, God is waiting for you with open arms. No matter what you're feeling, God can make you feel 10, 20, 100 times better. If you're feeling depressed, He can take that away. If you're feeling happy, He can make that happiness even better. So go to God. Turn to God. Look for God. He's waiting for you. Have a blessed day, everybody.